Jamie here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Thursday, May 29th, 8:58 a.m. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures up about 3/4% now off the highs, the overnight highs. Markets yesterday opened in the red, bounced a little bit into the green about 9:45 or so, and then that was it. Traded in the red for most of the day. Some late session selling pressure. I don't really think it was the Fed minutes, but that's kind of where things started. And then we closed at lows. So S&P was down about 0.5%, giving back some of Tuesday's gains. Nothing crazy. There was no big catalyst. No, pretty much just the minutes yesterday, and everybody was waiting, holding their breath in anticipation of the Nvidia earnings. Right, Nvidia was. I mean, it's had monster quarters. Right, it's hard to see a company that has such a huge market capitalization growing like it's growing, but it continues to do it. And sure enough, after the close, monster earnings, great guidance. Would have been a huge revenue beat if the, I don't know, it was like $7-8 billion worth of those HTO chips to China weren't nixed, right? So a good sign. And then we've seen it before where Nvidia has these great earnings and a beat, and then the stock trades lower, like almost like a sell the news. So good to see it higher. So that was higher, and then about 6:30 or so, boom, there's news that the court is uh, putting a stop to the tariffs. Right? They just they say they have 10 days to put a halt to the tariffs, the Trump tariffs. So futures soared. I'm like, what is this? Is this on the video? Is there some kind of news? And then is that right? And then of course right away the Trump administration appealed that decision. And then this morning you have Besson kind of saying, oh, we have other tools at our disposal. They expect it to be overturned. Deals are still being negotiated, whatever. So I mean, to me, I think there's more positive that comes out of this than negative, right? The positive here is that there trade deals are going to be made regardless if the tariffs that were initiated on Liberation Day stay in place, right? So if these deals are made, it doesn't matter what the court decides, right? If all these deals are made, right? Uh, and then it just, I mean, it'll be negatively impact some of the fentanyl tariffs, right? To Canada and Mexico and China. So if those get nixed, I mean, it's a net positive. So I don't know how much we're going to pull here at the open. At first it's like kind of a knee jerk reaction. Wow, this is great. You start pulling back, some of the uncertainty, but then it just creates more uncertainty again. Imagine being like a small to mid-sized business that has this impacts uh, huge impacts, and it's changing on a daily basis. Just remarkable stuff. I mean, there's reports that folks who've been paying for the tariffs will get refunds. How's that work? What does that look like? I mean, just all the costs associated. Just hopefully, again, this all gets resolved. And I always try to be the optimist, a glass half full situation where it gets resolved that's beneficial for the global economy. I mean, great for the U.S., great for trading partners, and then we can move on from this and move on to the economy kicking on all cylinders. So for me, I keep talking about 586 to 597 on a SPY. We got up to 598 and change in the pre-market. Uh, if we do find some pressure here at the open, I just want to see 590 um, hold, right? The 590 handle. If that breaks, I'll be open to get some SQQQ calls into tomorrow. Just because, not because I'm bearish the market, but I think there's still some folks who just think this is not going to work out right, and they'll take advantage of weakness. So that's kind of the thought process there. But I do think if we can hold 590, get up to 594 plus and close, I think that bodes well for 600 in the coming day or two. Not only that, Ryan Dietrich always has some great charts. If you take a look at the S&P performance after a 5% May, it's every single day has been green. Let's see, he just posted this. I posted in the chat room. You can see, but I always like great historicals. Obviously, one of these days will be the anomaly, right? So we'll have to see how this all plays out. But on average, you're talking a 20% gain for 12 months after this. So, all right. So that's kind of overall market. And then I continue to watch the 30-year yield, which ticked up just a tad yesterday. At some point, hopefully, I don't have to continue to watch that. But certainly, you got to be open to scenarios. I'm not ruling out that this yen carry trade 2.0 situation doesn't crop its head in the coming days, or was last week just a vacuum for news, right? And the people filled the news with these stories that creates fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or at least clickbaits, right? All right, so that's kind of the overall market. So now individual names, after the tweet, after the news yesterday, I'm like, Wayfair's going to $50. I mean, take a look at a name that has such a huge impact on tariff-related situation. So another rally yesterday, up nearly 3%. That's 200-day moving average, 42.22. I locked some more of my spec calls out for over 200, 400%, and 700%, somewhere in there. Don't know the exact math. You can see it in the spec trade room. And then I just held a couple runners just because I was saying on the rand yesterday, if it breaks 422.22, the 200 day, I think it was to 45. We get that news yesterday. I'm like, wow, the 45 is going to come quick. I did get some June strikes as well. So the plan, I'm going to lock the rest of the weeklies in today just because and maybe it does go to 45 today, but I'm a little worried that maybe there is some kind of pull too. So don't want to be in spot where I lose those profits. So I'll close those out, and then I'll look to close some of the Junes out to cover costs. Those probably should be up close to 100% at the open, and then I'll ride the rest. Supposedly At Home, which used to be a publicly traded company, was acquired back in like 2021 or something. Looks like maybe that's going belly up. If that's the case, that's just another one of those competitors that's out of the landscape. Just bodes well for W. So typically the stock's going to trade ahead of that news, ahead of that news, not when it's completely bankrupt, right? I mean, market's not going to say, oh, finally we're going to wait At Home is bankrupt and doesn't sell merchandise anymore to bid up the stock. No, it's going to price that in, right? So hopefully that adds some fuel to the fire as well today. All right, so that's W. I mean, take a look at a longer day chart here, and every time it's kind of like been stuck at that 200-day moving average. So I think if it really gets some gas over 200, I think it's off to the races. All right, so that's W. GameStop disappointing. Well, I would say disappointing. Some nice profits this week. Locked some of those June 50s in for almost 200% on Monday, and then I closed the rest. Not Monday, excuse me, Tuesday. And then yesterday, I was worried, similar to the market, that there was going to be some kind of sell the news event. Sure enough, it opens into green up near 36 and then just sells off after the open. So I took the rest of my calls out for like 80%. And then I was waiting for the premiums to come down. So finally in the afternoon, I went and got some July strikes. I'll be patient there. I mean, similar with the June strikes, they were red many times, and then they finally paid dividends, right? They finally hit pay dirt. So I think the same scenario is going to play out. I think GameStop's going to trade over $40 in the coming weeks, and then 50s by the end of June. So that's my thought process. So or at least that's where I think it's headed. If that happens, obviously July is going to pay. So I'll continue to be patient there. But similar to what it did after its earnings and then its offering news, it sold off, and it was like sell the news events, and then it bounced back even stronger. So I think that's going to be the same scenario. Hopefully it can hold 30 if it does get weakness today, and then I think it starts to bounce. Joby, my old friend, got some strikes there as well. I was putting on the watch list this morning. I wouldn't be surprised to see some consolidation. It's kind of one of those divisive names. If it gets down to $8, I might look for some more later dated strikes because I think it's getting closer to like game day, right? To the time frame where it's actually going to generate meaningful revenues. And then once it gets approvals, things like that, and similar, to Wayfair. Once At Home goes bankrupt, it's going to trade higher before that. And it's similar. I think Joby and Archer, both of those, going to trade higher before those big events. So thought process there. Dell reports their earnings after the close today. The plan when I got the calls earlier this week was to lock some in to cover costs and ride the rest on premium bill. That hasn't happened. HPQ reported earnings after the close, a dismal report. Dell traded lower on that news, and then NVIDIA report helped boost it up, and then you had the tariff news. Hopefully the premiums are flat or green. I'm going to close the rest of the spec calls out and revisit. Not that I don't think you can trade higher on earnings. It's just I don't have that conviction, right? And for me, with what I've paid, it's going to have to trade 135 plus to make the risk worth the reward. So that's kind of the thought process there. And then other names I'm looking at, obviously, RH, it's trading off its overnight highs down here, 190 all the way up to 202. Yesterday after hours, have to think that trade's higher here, right? But I keep thinking that it's been a good trade, and some trades haven't worked out on RH, but when it does pay out, pays out nice. Premiums are lower now, so don't be surprised I had some strikes if the market finds footing here today. And then other names, Pool. I keep looking at Pool. Down under $300 yesterday. They're I think they have like 6 or 7 investor events they're doing June 4th. They have like 2 or 3 of them. I don't even know if that's gonna be the catalyst for it, but I certainly don't think it's gonna add any pressure to it. And you look, it looks almost like I wouldn't say it's oversold, but maybe it's found a bottom here. So it gets over 300 today. I might look for some calls. The thing, only monthly strikes, spreads are wide. The 330s look interesting, but it's going to be tough to get an entry. So I'm probably going to try and put bids in, and then see if I get filled. Because on names like that, when it's not very liquid, if you have to get out, it's tough, right? So it's pretty much a losing proposition to get in, because if you have to get out, you're going to lose money. So because the spread's so wide, so it almost makes sense not to trade out unless you have a strong conviction it's headed higher. But I do like the name, especially seasonally strong period time frame for them. And not only that, you have the backdrop of that Berkshire Hathaway stake. 2 times in a row they've done back-to-back quarters. You have to think they're going to keep increasing their stake. And then last but not least, TKO. Was still watching that flat as a pancake yesterday. Love this story. At some point, I'll be in some strikes. And that's it, folks. Hopefully a green session here today. I mean, I'm still watching Reddit here today. I mean, it closed pretty much right at the highs yesterday, and then it was at 110 in the early hour session. it's maybe I'll trade it tomorrow or later today, depending on what it does, but still like this one for 120 plus. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back. Rock and roll.